Webb.
Mysteries abound around the world, from strange lights in the night sky to ghostly apparitions passing from one realm to the next. From the great pyramids of Egypt to what lies beneath the depths of Loch Ness. From Bigfoot to Atlantis, they are all mysteries waiting to be solved. Join Laurie Phillips, Lauren Smith, Graz, and Billy Simmons as they search for the truth on Night Callers Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. You got the usual crew tonight, Billy, Graz, Lori, and Lauren. It's May 7th, 2015. Yeah. How are y'all doing tonight?
Hi. I don't know. I didn't understand a thing you said with that accent. What the hell are you talking about? Hi.
Apparently we got to talk like we're from Georgia to keep Graz interested.
Yeah.
Give me some of that Georgia Peach, baby.
Well.
Oh my God, you're gonna kill me tonight. I can just feel it.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Go ahead, Graz. Tell them about that phone number. Tell them about that phone number, Graz.
Well, what? I didn't understand a thing you just said, girl. Ladies and gentlemen, give us a call right here at 347-989-0313. Give us a call.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
And if you're single, Graz's number is
425-775-0313. Ooh, he was giving out his real number.
Oh no! Go ahead and message me, ladies, and I'll get you hooked up.
Especially if you're from Atlanta.
Oh my God!
I've been doing great.
That's good to hear. I think you're the only one that hasn't had weather.
Now, Bill is
so.
under severe weather tonight. He's got tornado headed his way. So,
yeah.
You know, that happens every time Bill gets on the show. You know, he's always got tornado headed his way. Have you noticed that? You go back
mine, no, he can't, no, because mine are every Wednesday we have tornadoes, and in Texas it's every Thursday. That's how the South does it. We take turns. You know how it goes.
That's true.
And be sure to tune in next Thursday for another set of tornadoes.
Let's hope not.
Right here on Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. Be sure to call in 347-989-0313. I'm sorry, go ahead. You got me hooked there.
And next guys want me to get a lawn chair and sit out there and take photos or something. I don't know.
Yeah, get out the thermal camera and give it a shot.
You all know that scene in Twister when she's like, cow, another cow. Yep,
Yeah.
Bigfoot,
Cow.
another Bigfoot.
Cow.
And that's my dog. Sorry, guys. Have y'all had anything squatchy going on? Not to sound like a certain person in the community, but
Who would that be? Now I don't even know.
You?
I have.
Oh,
Been
okay.
having
Please
squatchy
share with the
activities.
group.
Yes. Well, the other night I was actually doing a radio interview for a show called Bigfoot Talk or Talk Bigfoot. I'll let y'all know more about it when I find out more about it. But anyway, I went out there and I've had absolutely nothing going on out here all winter, early spring, nothing. And then I went out there and I heard something very large moving around out there, and so I said, I'm going to get the spotlight and kind of shine it down on the ground and see if I can see what it is, kind of a little light out there, just a little bit to see what it is. And when I went in the house and came out with that spotlight, they took off. I guess they thought I was going to really light them up, but I wasn't. So then it took off, and I heard a lot of branches breaking and stuff like that. And it sounded like something big. And then, but I never could see anything really because I didn't really want to shine the light out there. But I never saw any eye shine or anything, but I just got that feeling like I was being observed while I was sitting out there on the porch. That's the first time in quite some time that I've actually felt something around here. And it's about that blackberry time. And we've been hearing the whistles and things like that usually happen this time of year. We'll hear like one whistle, then a response. And of course, we've been having all the howling too, but I'm not sure if all of that is coyote or if it is all coyote. I can't be sure. Some of them are pretty deep. So it's been kind of exciting around here. Things seem to be perking up a little bit, and I'm kind of excited about that. So that's all I really have to tell. Oh, also, we did see something of good size moving through the brush down by the pond. It's very, very grown up down there, and so we just saw something very dark moving through the brush, and it had to have been a good size, or we wouldn't have been able to see it. You know, pigs go down through there and stuff like that, and they're completely covered up by the brush. So, but we're getting a new tractor tomorrow, and that brush is going to be gone. So it better enjoy its little hidey places right now because it's fixing to be cleared out. So anyway, what about the rest of you? Anything going on in your life besides tornadoes, Bill? And
That's enough, trust me.
Where do you go, Bill, when you have a tornado? I mean, where?
Right here at the command center, just prop my feet up, bourbon and coke, yeehaw. I mean, you know.
While your family huddles and shivers in a bathtub with a mattress over them, right?
Eddie M, it's a twister.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's not a lot you can do. You're either going or you're not, you know.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That storm last night here in Oklahoma and more, there was a woman that went down into her storm shelter and shut the door, and they have really bad flooding there right now, for those of you who don't watch the news. They had really bad flooding, and she actually got trapped in the storm shelter and drowned. She drowned. So there was one death last night.
Wow.
There were, I can't remember if there were like 22 casualties. I'm so awful. But there was one death with her. So.
That's awful.
That's terrifying. That's not something I would have worried about if a storm was coming. Not on my list of ways to pass away. So, but yeah, she was 42 and she drowned in her storm shelter.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, I don't really like storm shelters anyway. You know, everyone's like, oh my gosh, you need to go get a storm shelter. I'm like, I don't want to crawl into that little black box until I absolutely have to. You know, that's part of living in Oklahoma. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, the weather's so bad. I'm like, the sky's a little dark. It's not bad yet. Wait till it blacks out, then we'll go. Just don't worry about it. I don't know.
Oh, heck, I remember one time going to a storm cellar, and it hadn't been used in a long time, and I opened it up. It was just me and my son. He was little then, and we went down in there, and we lit that lantern, and I saw these little eyes and tears of all these webs, you know, all over the place. And I said, we're going to the bathroom, son. We're going to the bathtub, son. Well, I didn't care. I did not care. I wasn't going to stay down there with about 1,000 spiders. No.
Yeah.
Stick them out, Lori.
Yeah.
No, I'll just take my chances in the bathtub.
Yeah, I'd rather face a tornado than a spider or a whole cellar of spiders.
A bunch of ground recluses in your darn storm cellar. That'd be fun.
Like most people are probably really thinking, "Oh my God, you're scared of spiders." You don't know what kind of spiders we have in Oklahoma. Okay, you just don't know that your skin will fall off of your body. I know people who have had limbs amputated from spider bites. It's no joke around here. I'd rather get stung by a scorpion in Oklahoma than bit by a spider. And that's your choices. And that's not including rattlesnakes and all that. This is just the spiders and scorpions. Those are your choices. So if that tells you anything about where we live, it's not all cowboys and Indians here.
Well, we can't get grass to move down here.
God,
no way.
What a wimp.
Stay on this side of the Rockies. Thank you very much.
I heard a rumor that Texas is going to legalize it, so he might move. You don't know.
Legalize what?
It.
Oh.
It. I don't even it, let alone having caring about it being legalized. Oh, well. Me and Willie, yeah.
I didn't know spiders were illegal. I need to call them all. They
Well, if they are, I want mine deported ASAP. You ain't getting no free food here. Bye.
Well, bring them on.
I sure am.
I went out last weekend just to drive around. I'm still just checking out the new roads. Every year you got new closures, and I got to find out where they are. And I found a tree break on the last weekend. I'm going to try a new road this time. I'm going way, way, way deep this time. Almost.
I am so glad that you're finding your way out there again. I knew that you were discouraged because they were closing a lot of roads. But
well, I've been having a lot of medical problems the last 4 years, so I haven't made it out there very much in the first place. But because of all the damn closures they have up here in the Cascades, it's hard to find any place that you can get to anymore. At least on the north end of the Cascades, north of Mount Rainier. I don't know what's going on. And I had to get my $35 Discovery Pass to go play out in the woods. I had to pay that to the government for that part so I can legally go out there. And, I'll find something to do.
That's crazy. Because if it's national forest, anybody can go there, and you can camp there, and you can go anywhere you want to in there as long as it's not on somebody's property. It's awesome.
Right, they have different eyes up here. It's a liberal state, you know, and they're trying to keep people out. They're funneling everybody into basically woodsy Disneyland kind of places. And we got 20-something million people in the Puget Sound, and every Friday they go out and play in the woods. So you've got 10, 15 million people hitting the highways to go out into these funneled up areas, and you got wall-to-wall camping. That's not the way it used to be. It's only in the last 15 or so years that it's been doing that. I used to be able to go from Seattle to Wenatchee on the logging roads in my van and camp out in the middle of nowhere and not even have to worry about anything. Can't do that anymore. But that's progress in America, in a liberal state. I didn't say that, did I? So anyway, I'm going back out again tonight and see how deep I can get up there.
Awesome. Tonight?
Tonight? This weekend, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's always the weekend for
tonight
that.
is just give us a call at 347-989-0313. Thank you very much.
Press 1 to speak to the host. Otherwise, just if you're calling to listen in, just don't hit the 1 button. Graz, you ready to roll that bio?
Okay, here we go. Nine Callers Bigfoot Radio presents Dr. Samuel Webb. Oh, God, I forgot to ask him, is it Sentell or Sentell? What do you think, Bart?
I think it's Sentell.
Sentell, okay, all right. In continuing the North American Sasquatch Researcher Series, Night Callers Bigfoot Radio brings you a very special guest tonight, Dr. Samuel Webb of Louisiana, Webb Sentell of Louisiana. Dr. Sentell is a neuropsychologist with a PhD from Vanderbilt and has been the principal as well as co-author on publications regarding animal behavior. When he is not in his Bossier, Louisiana clinic, is it Bossier? I'm a Yankee.
Bossier.
Bossier. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Yankee talking here. I'm sure Webb is having a giggle about this one here. If he isn't in his clinic, I'm just going to skip that part. He may be found, Bossier, whatever. He may be found on a mule or in a canoe exploring habitats where anomalous large, at least I didn't call him Karen yet, where anomalous large hair-covered hominids have been reported. He concentrates his research in an area known as the Big Piney, which stretches from Falk. I said Falk, right?
Yes, you did.
Through Norland,
Somebody mute me.
East Texas, and to the Big Thicket of Texas. Webb has made numerous excursions to locations where sightings and reports occur. Webb does not consider himself a Bigfoot researcher. He is an ethnologist who happens to be interested in not only participating in the scientific recognition, but also the cognitive development of Sasquatch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to Bossier.
Dr. Sentell, are you with us?
I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, and welcome to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. And I apologize for my compadre there for murdering your little home city name there, Bossier, Louisiana.
What do you mean, Bossier?
That's
what?
It depends on whether you have your little finger raised or not. If you raise up your little finger, you say Bossier, and if it's just Bossier, if it's just
Are you? Oh, Graz. What's bad is Graz is the best of all of us at pronouncing things. So for him to butcher
just don't give me Southern names, please.
That just killed me. Oh man.
Sure. Dr. Sentell, can we call you Webb, or what would you like to be called? Doctor, or how should we address you tonight? What would you feel comfortable with?
I'm Webb to my friends.
Okay. Well, we're
Sounds
your friends, so we're going to call you Webb.
That'll work.
Okay, my very first question, and please don't think I'm an idiot, but I have no idea what a neuropsychologist is. Could you explain what
The good thing about psychology is it's so very broad. When I went to graduate school, I was fascinated with psychology because I like the clinical work, and that would be called, in general, a clinical psychologist. But I also liked animal research, and I joked with a lot of people early on that if I get tired and burn out from sitting in the clinic with depressed people, then I'm going to go live with the gorillas like Jane Goodall and live in the party. And guess what? Here I am at 58 years old. It's not exactly Africa. They're large and hairy, and I'm kind of doing that. So be careful of what you wish for. So in psychology, we used to call it comparative psychology, and that's animal behavior, but now we call it ethology, ethology, and it's the study of species in their natural habitat. Konrad Lorenz was the first one that really made it popular. He's the guy that the geese followed around all the time, the baby geese.
Okay.
Remember that guy?
Okay. Yes.
Because his rain boots on and a bunch of baby geese following him. They thought that Dr. Lorenz was their mama, and so that's ethology, and that's a little different from ethnology. Ethnology is living with indigenous people and studying people in their natural habitats. But my publications that I got early on in graduate school that put me on the map as an animal behavior guy were in the field of ethology. And so that's Jane Goodall is probably the most popular ethologist around. And so that's my direction. Now, for neuropsychology, we talk about, the brain runs everything. And so in psychology, you can get off into the physiological realm, and ethologists sometimes study neural patterns and brain and behavior relationships. And when you take that to the clinic and you study people that have, ADHD for one, brain damage, autistic spectrum disorders and things like that, that goes over into the realm of what we call neuropsychology, which is brain and behavior relationships. And you can do that as a basic scientist and stay in the lab and do research, or you can go out into the clinic and be more of an applied scientist, that's what I do now mostly. I do my Bigfoot research as a sideline to my clinical work. So but as I said before, here I am in the latter part of my career, actually living in the woods, searching for large hair-covered hominids, which I had joked about that early on. But does that kind of give you a flavor for what neuropsychology is all about?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, had you known anything about Bigfoot or heard anything about Bigfoot through the years? Anyone heard any stories or anything like that to get you? Or
in my life,
kind of something that just came back as a surprise to you later on?
I recall, the first I ever heard was my big brother telling me about the abominable snowman and seeing that scary show, was it Ice Station Zebra or something, where the Yeti reaches his hand under the tent. So I was probably 8 or 9 years old then, but right about that time, I think it was October of 67, the Argosy article came out with the Roger Patterson, Bob Gimlin film. And I went right down to the newsstand and bought that thing and read it over and over and over. And I became fascinated right then with the whole Bigfoot concept. And as I grew older, when I was in high school, I was an avid coon hunter. And do you guys know about coon hunting?
Mm-hmm.
You need a tree and walker or a blue tick and maybe a mule, and you go out to the woods and you just waste a lot of time chasing the wily unloader there. But basically, I started coon hunting in high school, and I had some very strange experiences. And I had my first, what I consider to be an encounter with a Sasquatch. We were lost down in the swampy part of Lake Bistineau, and we couldn't find our way out, and we had to build a fire. It was January and cold. And something started circling us about 4 o'clock in the morning and knocking on trees. And we had never heard anything like this. And I didn't know about tree knocking then. And so the dogs were just going crazy. The dogs were and it wasn't a hunting kind of craziness. They were very alarmed by whatever was circling us. And it circled us for about 30 minutes, and we speculated on what it was. Nobody ever figured it out. Years later, I put two and two together and realized that what was happening was there was a sauce probably. Now, let me say this for this show. I want to invite you to put the word ostensible or possible in front of everything I say, because we're going to dive into this with the absolute assurance that they exist. I have not yet seen one, but I've had everything else happen to me, that pretty much everything that's possible except a unequivocal visual. But that was my first experience at Lake Bistineau in Bossier Parish, and that's where I do most of my work now, a lot of it at least. But and then before graduate school, I lived on a pecan orchard in Caddo Parish near Caddo Lake, and one night the coyotes just came through all the time to our farm. It was just a real fascinating thing to listen to the coyotes, and I was somewhat of an interested in animals then. And one night the coyotes were howling, and all of a sudden they stopped, and this one subject really let loose with a howl that I had never heard before. It was it started off very low, very bass, and it just went to you guys heard these before, just a tremendous howl. And so later on, when I went to graduate school at Vanderbilt a couple of years after that, and I said to my animal research professor, Dr. Richard Porter at Vanderbilt, he was a well-known animal researcher. I said, Dick, I have heard a southern red wolf. And he said, what do you mean those things are almost extinct? I said, well, one night the coyotes were doing their usual thing, and I heard this one dude that was markedly different. And he said, Webb, southern red wolves are just really on the verge of extinction. It's very unlikely. So we talked about that, and we got to talking about Sasquatch. And he didn't say, I think that's what it was, but he did not laugh at me. Here he is, a well-published animal behavior scientist, and he said somebody ought to try to some scientist ought to get involved in the Sasquatch question. And so he legitimized it for me, and that's what got me started. And I didn't think about doing that seriously at the time, because, as you know, you really can't get a Sasquatch paper published in very many places, and it's difficult. And I'll tell you the one place that I think is receptive to it in the scientific community as we go on here. But basically, I came out of graduate school a trained ethologist with a couple of publications in refereed, respectable journals. And as I got into my clinical work, at some point I'd been practicing for quite a few years, and I read the book about the hunt for skinwalker. Are you all familiar with the hunt for skinwalker?
Yes.
And I picked up that book. Of course, it scared the mess out of me, and that got me back interested. I said, I've been meaning to get involved. And so I started looking around for a group to be with. This was, probably the early 2000s, maybe about 2005, I guess. And I found a guy by the name of Jim Lansdale and Bobby Hamilton subsequently, and the Gulf Coast Bigfoot group. And at this point, I was already moving toward a no-kill perspective, and as you know, Gulf Coast is very much pro-kill. And so, and I told Jim, I said, it's like the poker player, Canada Bill, was brought into court, and the judge said, well, Bill, if you knew the poker game was rigged, why were you in it? He said, Your Honor, it was the only game in town. And so the Gulf Coast guys were the only people around really doing anything of substance, and they had purportedly, again, there's that word, ostensibly purported, they had purportedly shot one in 2002. And so I got to know Jim Lansdale, and he showed me a lot of what he was doing and the way he thought about things. And I wrote an official scientific proposal, just like you would do for any college or graduate school, and I submitted it to Gulf Coast to do a Roger Patterson, Bob Gimlin type of mule ride. I was gonna ride my mules, my partner and I, all over Monster Central until we had an encounter and tried to film it. And I had it, how I was going to bait the situation with food and all, but it was rejected. It was rejected, and that was both a bad thing.
Who rejected it, Webb? Who rejected it? The Jim and Bobby, or someone else?
Jim's statement to me was that the family, his family that owned all this property, did not want. They had some drilling. That we have all this Haynesville shale gas well going in now, and some forestry stuff was going on, and his statement to me was the family didn't want to be involved with that. And so what happened was I took my PhD and went elsewhere, and I happened to find a better place. A colleague of mine had just gotten a piece of property that was closer to what's called Chimp Haven, and some people had speculated that the reason the Sasquatch liked Monster Central so well was because it was very close to Chimp Haven. And this was a spot. It was about a mile from Chimp Haven, and it was about almost as close to a local parish prison where you could think of it as a human zoo. You could go watch humans play basketball and interact. You could go watch the chimpanzees interact, and there are several farms that you could forage from. And so turns out to be an ideal spot. And I put my mules there and proceeded to train my mules. The model I follow is called, it's Robert W. Morgan came up with the idea of what you do is you do something interesting. You don't look for them, you try to get them to look for you by doing something.
Right.
And so here you've got this crazy guy, myself, out in the woods or the farm next to the woods at night, trying to get mules to jump fences and jump up into pickup trucks. And we used to use these small Welsh pony mules, and they'll jump up in a truck like a dog. So, and here I am, and mules are kind of hard-headed, so we're going round and round, and sure enough, I kind of got the feeling that we were being watched. Eventually, we got noticed. So one night I was feeding my mules, and the mules were extremely nervous and kept looking down toward the pond. And I got my Q-beam, and I shined my Q-beam down toward the pond, and I caught a large yellow-green eye. And I couldn't tell how high off the ground it was. I couldn't tell very much about it. So I took my little dog, and I said, come on, Freckles. And we went down there, and I didn't see anything beyond the eye shine peeking around a tree. But my dog suddenly pointed, and when I looked down under the pine straw, there was a huge scat sample there. And this is what started the real deal with me. It looked quite human, and I gathered it up, and it was larger than human, though, and I took it into town, and the very next morning, about sunrise, I presented it to my veterinarian friend. And I said, what is this, and how can we get it examined? And he said, well, let's send it off to the Texas A&M lab. And so we sent this scat to the A&M lab. And meanwhile, I hustled back out there because I thought if the scat's there, this thing has to have crossed the fence somehow. So I went back, and sure enough, I found a couple of tufts of hair hung in the barbed wire fence, actually on the top strand. And so I very carefully harvested those hair samples. Meanwhile, later on that week, as I recall, and I won't mention, he asked not to be mentioned, the veterinarian. But he said the lab says that they don't know what it is, that they think it looks human, but it's not human, and they can't, as I say, they couldn't identify the species of the feces. And so, and so basically, they said they thought it ate organ meat. It had an extremely foul odor to it, and you can see it's on my Facebook page. All the stuff that I have is under Samuel Webb Sentell on my Facebook page. And after the study that came out, I went public with all this stuff. But anyway, so I was looking for Dr. Henner Fehrenbach to send the hair sample to because he's supposed to be the real expert on Sasquatch hair. Meanwhile, I ran across a gentleman by the name of David Paulides. And you guys probably have had him on your show, I guess, probably.
No, not yet. But we had him on our show about 3 years ago. But it's been a while going on.
Yeah. I emailed him actually, and I said, where do I send this hair sample? Where's Dr. Fairback? He said, actually, what would be a better idea is to send this hair sample to Dr. Melba Ketchum over near Lori there in Central East Texas. So I sent the hair sample in to Dr. Ketchum, and I had to sign my life away and with all the and you guys probably know that story. But anyway, Dr. Ketchum validated it. She sent me an email, a very interesting email several weeks later, and said, your critter was a male. So it tested out to have a Y chromosome. We thought it was a young male that was curious and coming back in. And I'll go back into that if you guys want to know more about that. But anyway, that's what got me in the Sasquatch Genome Project. And then, I was invited to go to the press conference and all that sort of stuff. So, but then, and I presented my research to, it's called the SSE, it's the Society for Scientific Exploration. And I went to Boulder in 2012 and presented my stuff. I was still under the non-disclosure agreement, so I couldn't tell them that at this point there are a lot of people that are thinking it's a human hybrid, but it only solidified my no-kill position much more solidly. And I showed them, I showed them my scat sample, my hair, and some of the other evidence that I had. But since that time, I've moved on to 2 other habituation sites. That site has become, I guess you'd say, compromised due to people moving in and things changing. So I'm on to other places now. So that's kind of how I got to where you guys find me today. And I'm getting ready at this very moment to go to Washington, D.C. On the 28th of May. There's going to be a conference of the SSD, the Society for Scientific Exploration, and it's called Making Connections. And I'm going to I've been invited to present my second round of trying to make connections with these Sasquatch. It fits real well with the theme. But the society came about, actually, as I understand it, from people who had been to the Himalayas and had encounters or anecdotal evidence about the Yeti, and there was no place to publish these studies, and so these Himalayan climbers, I think, were some of the original people that got together to form the SSE. So it is a group of legitimate PhD. You have to be a full member, you have to be a legitimate PhD, and then their interest is in fringe areas of science. So they will, if you have some extraterrestrial things that you've been studying, or you are studying cold fusion, or Rupert Sheldrake is a famous member of SSE. So that's who I've been affiliated with in trying to disseminate my work.
Okay. That was wonderful.
And
wonderful. Yes, that was my next question, was what was the sample that you submitted to the Sasquatch Genome Study? And
the lab, the first lab that the way this started was the guy at the lab told me, he said poop only travels one way in the male. So I didn't get the scat sample back, but the hair sample, it didn't blast all the way for Dr. Ketchum, but it did blast enough to reveal a Y chromosome. You can look at it on her database, there were a lot of hair samples, a little bit of blood, and I submitted actually, five samples. That was the only one that was validated out of all the ones I submitted. And I had a blood sample that I thought was so absolutely sure to be Sasquatch. And it turned out to be a bird, according to Dr. Ketchum. But I was great. And you can see me carving the blood off this broken limb that I thought was going to be a really good finding. But since that time, I went and presented my research for SSE under the, in science we talk about rejecting the null hypothesis. So, if you say, I think I've got a significant result, the null hypothesis is that there's nothing significant here. And then when you show that there is, you reject the null of no significance, and you say this is a significant finding. So there were 2 anthropologists, Dr. Stephen Frost and Dr. Nina Jablonski, who had made public statements that nobody with scientific training has ever come up with anything like hair or scat or one of them said a tooth, or evidence of nests that can be examined in a lab. So I had, right off the bat, I had scat and hair, and that I had both submitted both these to the lab, and I had a lot of pictures of what I think are nests. So I went to SSE and I said, my presentation is to refute the claims of Dr. Frost and Dr. Jablonski that nobody's ever submitted anything to the lab, because here's my stuff. I submitted this scat sample, and it was found to be anomalous. The lab said, we don't, as I like to say, we don't know the species of the feces. They said it looks human, but it's not human. It's too large. It's looks like it eats organ meats. So basically, and then there was the hair that Melba felt was a valid sample. So I said there are people out there with scientific backgrounds who have submitted stuff to labs for analysis. And so my notion was you gotta stop saying that publicly, because that's just not true. And of course we know other people that have found scientific samples that, and you'll find that there are quite a few people in that database who had pretty good backgrounds in research. But
now, couldn't Melba have done something with that scat as far as pulling out some kind of DNA from skin samples or anything else?
She might have. I did not know Melba at the time. That was that David Paulides said, send this to Dr. Ketchum. I had already sent the scat off. But now the problem with scat and DNA, as I understand it, and DNA is not my area of expertise by any means, but the problem is that it could be the DNA of the animal that you hope that you're looking at. It could be the DNA of the animal that it ate, or it could be the DNA of something in the animal that it ate. So it could be, it's hard to narrow it down, as I understand. So they tell me that scat is the favorite thing to do. But after that time, I switched gears, and I started trying to do habituation work. And, again, I have squared off on the radio with Jim Lansdale and folks who are pro-kill, and I have been very strongly no-kill. I think it's sort of like shooting a Hottentot. You just can't shoot a Hottentot and drag it into the lab and say, we got one. So I decided the ethical thing to do is to go out there and sit and wait until they make themselves manifest. And that's what I've been doing. And I have two what I consider to be good habituation spots where we think they're coming on a regular basis. And I've had some very fascinating things happen. I've had some jars opened. I've been playing a marble game. I'll just tell you, I've been playing a what I call the fritter game with some intelligent subjects since about middle of October of this last year. And about halfway into this, I decided to try some non-nutritive items. The first thing I put out was a tiny plastic turtle, a very well-made little plastic turtle, and it disappeared. And it came back about 2 months later, along with a blue marble that had been missing for a long time. So not only do I have
that is fascinating.
and the couple of highlights. The first highlight was my wife came home with this treat she calls Amish sticky bread, and now I can't promise you that these guys only eat organic and homemade, but we had been using fritters, home cooked fritters from this place where we got apple fritters, and one night they didn't have fritters, so my wife said, get one of those apple strudel things, and it's one of these, highly processed apple strudel package things. And I put it up in the place, and our subject took one bite of it and threw it on the ground. So I came back the next day, and the apple strudel was just, one bite was gone, and it just obviously didn't like this processed food. So my wife came home with this Amish sticky bread, and it was great. And I said, I'm going to try this on these guys. So I took some out there, and whoever was doing this snatched it out of the package and took the whole container and everything. And so I decided it's popular, so I put some down in this jar and screwed the lid on the jar and put it up in the tree. And I came back out there, and something had unscrewed the lid off this jar and taken all the Amish sticky bread. So that was the first time. that something had actually opened the jar. And this was about 3 o'clock in the morning at my place, and it's about a half a mile back in the swampy woods. And the apple that I had left was half eaten from the top. And it was a juicy apple, and there was one big drop of apple juice hanging from the bottom of the apple. So I thought, wow, I think I've come in mid-caper here. And so I was very excited, and I replaced the pastry and reset everything, and I was walking out. And about 45 yards from me at my 2 o'clock position, something screamed the loudest thing I've ever heard in the woods. And, I mean, it just doubled me over. And I had a walking stick and a little knocking stick with me. And I just said, okay, this is it, the moment of truth. And I just sat down and cross-legged in the trail, and I started rapping this little light knocks, and I played a little wood knock game with something for a few minutes. Very light, very subtle knocks. And I thought, oh, my goodness, the fritter. And I got up and I walked the 50 yards back to where I just left a brand-new fritter, and the fritter was gone. And so this was the first night that it just blew me away. That, and so my assumption was that I'd walked up. I think there are 3 of them that live at this particular place. And I think this is a mother and a youngster, and I think the youngster had climbed up and was eating the top off this apple when I came up there, because I heard something retreating back into the bush as I walked up to the food plot. And I think mother was trying to. You can see it on my Facebook page under the fritter critter does a David Copperfield. And unfortunately, I got so excited that the video that I had of that, in trying to draw a map and take a picture of the map of what happened, I accidentally erased the video. You guys probably know how that happens some night. So I had to do a note. And so I think I walked up in mid-caper, and I think that Junior was standing over there by the bio, and they were separated, and I was kind of in between them. So I think, she screamed at me, got my undivided attention, while Junior grabbed the fritter and went to the house or wherever they go, So that's the most intense thing I've ever had happen in the woods. I've had trees pushed over.
You handled it really, really well. I would not have stayed had I been screamed at. I believe I would have left the area. But you stayed.
Well, if you look at the map, if you see the map on the thing, you'll see that she chose to yell at me from an angle. She was ahead of me on the trail, so I had to walk past her. So I didn't want her, so I just sat down, and it's now I'll tell you this, and I know you guys. I'm preaching to the choir here, but I go where I think I know the Sasquatch. I go where I think I'm welcomed, and I'll go into that detail if you want me to. But these guys, I feel comfortable. Now, the guy that put me on this place, he said they're tricksters. They will test you. They will mess with you at first, but they want to interact with humans. And so the first time I went out to these particular woods, I was easing along the trail, and I saw 2 beautiful doe deer going down to the water hole. And they caught wind of me, and they ran off. And just about 15 seconds after that, I heard a big tree go over. It was like 75 degrees, no wind at all, and all of a sudden a tree cracks and falls over. I didn't see the tree, but I heard it. And I thought, I made somebody mad. Somebody was hunting those deer. And so that was about sunset the first time I went out on this property. And then I do a lot of solo cold camping, by myself. And that's part of the Robert Morgan thing. He says, go to the woods where they are by yourself without a gun, keep the light off, and you'll have an encounter. Well, that takes a little getting used to if folks haven't tried that. And so I was out there 7 miles in the swamp in my hammock, and it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's kind of hard to sleep when you're by yourself in Sasquatch company and the country. And so at 2 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden, crack, crash, boom, a tree goes over probably 50, 60 yards from me, not that far. And I subsequently felt my stomach vibrating. I looked down in my hammock, and I had a little light in my hammock, and I looked down there, and I could see and feel my stomach wiggling like a bowl of jelly or Jello, and I think that this was a result of infrasound. And you want to talk Tarzan speak. You want to say what's the Tarzan word for friend? But I started just saying, hey, I'm here to be your friend, and I want to, please. I said, please don't scare me. I think, or please don't frighten me. As soon as I said that, my stomach quit vibrating. I mean, I started talking to whoever it was that had pushed this tree over. And I think that, because then I thought to myself, I'm 2.7 miles down in the swamp. The palmetto and rattlesnakes are between me and the truck. I'm not going to jump out in my sock feet and run to the truck at all. I'm here, and this, and so that was an early moment of truth for me back on this particular place. And I've had 5 trees pushed over relatively nearby me. The closest was probably 40 yards. The furthest was probably, maybe almost a quarter of a mile. And I've had 2 people with me on the 3 times I was by myself. 2 times I was with other people who experienced these trees cracking and going over in absolutely no wind or weather. So, and that's kind of how they tested me early on. And they don't do that much anymore. In fact, since I got screamed at on November the 11th of this last year, the scream I was telling you about. And since then, I've heard one scream off in the distance, but they really seem like they go out of their way not to frighten me. And I kind of appreciate it. But on the other hand, if we're going to move forward, somebody's going to have to be a little bit scared one night. I found myself standing in the moonlight one night, holding up a fritter with something walking toward me. I wear these. I have a hearing enhancement. The only high tech stuff I'm using right now is a hearing enhancement. And I'm standing there in the moonlight, and I hear these large footsteps coming toward me slowly, breaking limbs and snapping twigs. And I'm standing there holding up this fritter, and I think we were both quite ambivalent, whoever this was and myself. It's just going to be tonight, but it wasn't tonight. But I'm actually more comfortable. I worry about wild hogs more than I worry about Sasquatch being aggressive. Particular thing. We've had a lot of experiences. I take some people with me, and a lot of times I go by myself. But we heard things. Like I say, I've been exchanging marbles with somebody in a very fascinating way. If you look on my Facebook page, it's called the Boo Radley Game. If you guys remember, Boo Radley was the person on To Kill a Mockingbird who left things in the hollow tree for scalp. And so, I mean, I've had them come and take the yellow marble and bring back the orange marble from the night before, bring the turtle back that's been gone for months. It's very fascinating, and it's kind of hard to follow, but if a person's interested, it's pretty much all there. I document my field work, pictures, and videos. And after the case study came out, I went public. I had it private before that, but after I went and did after I did the press conference with Melba and Mr. Erickson and all those folks and Dennis Foll, I just said, okay, I'm out of the Bigfoot closet now, so I just made everything public on my Facebook page.
Well, we have a question from one of our chat room people. Dear Dog wants to know, does the doctor think that these beings are potentially dangerous?
I think potentially yes, but I think they're very much like us. In fact, I think that at this point, I think the only evidence we have points to the fact that they are probably a human hybrid from about 12 to 15,000 years ago. And that ties in with a lot of theories and hypotheses that I guess you guys have probably explored on this show. But are they dangerous to us? Well, there are a very few stories, and you'll run into these stories if you look around, where people have been injured by them, but they're very, very few and far between. There are quite a bit more stories of Sasquatch being shot at and hit, and sometimes there's a couple of very poignant audio samples on the net of Sasquatch that have been hit by bullets. They just don't aggress us very much. So I think the answer is yes, they can be quite dangerous, and they can just tear you literally apart if they want to, but most of the time they don't. And I think times when they're aggressive, they probably have some youngsters or whatever in the area, and they're trying to run you out. That's probably what opinion, they use the infrasound probably to get you to vacate the area. But I go, like I say, I go where I'm relatively more welcome by them. Now, I'll tell you this. In the other habituation site where the gentleman lives, since he lives there, I don't go there quite as often, but I'll just tell you there's another facet to that. One night, this man was out with his dog about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was a little bit of moonlight, and he had a headlight on, and he heard something down by the bayou, and he looked, and he thought he saw something kind of in the vines of this tree, and as he looked closer, he realized he was looking at a Sasquatch hanging upside down over the bayou. And about that time, a bunch of noise happened, and then he heard this Sasquatch beating some animal on the ground. We have cypress knees, and it's easy to dispatch an animal by slamming it into these sharp cypress knees. So anyway, he said this guy's a trapper and a hunter. He's trapped, 60 coyotes, 40 bobcats. He said it's the most violent thing he's ever heard in the woods. This Sasquatch apparently beat this beaver on the bank and killed it, and then about 2 days later, his dog in the daytime found a piece of skeleton, a piece of backbone that had even the spinal cord canal had been emptied out, apparently with a stick or finger or something like that. You can see that on my Facebook page. But he named this Sasquatch Thunder, and I can tell you that after that episode, we quit camping out with Thunder. We just, I mean, the gentleman that experienced this was he was pretty much he was unflappable, but his wife said he was so upset by that he wouldn't go out at night for a while, and so we let Thunder have the night woods for a while, and there's a video that I did of a nest that probably has to do with this particular Sasquatch, but and I told the landowner, I said, I think he was just trying to impress you, and he said, well, he really did. But those are the two spots that are pretty active for us, and we have a lot of pictures. It's a lake in northwest Louisiana, and then my other spot is a lake in Bossier Parish, Louisiana, and so you can see a lot of those things. And sometimes I'm a little bit cryptic about the information because I don't want people, interlopers and all, going in there and pranking me or trying to.
Right.
But yeah, I try to leave all the information I can so people can piece together what's going on. But you can see the backbone that was found where he killed this beaver, and we call it the beaver murder, and it was pretty distressing. So these guys. There are some people that believe that that's why we don't find the bodies is because the deceased bodies. My understanding is that they tear them up and they disperse them. And I was privileged to see what is thought to be a Sasquatch funeral at one point, and it was a video that had a watermark that prohibited its use. In other words, if somebody were to put forth this video, the watermark of this well-known media company would be evidence that would allow these people to sue the folks for violation of copyright. They can't use the video, but there's about, I think it was maybe 4 Sasquatch, maybe 5, in a procession going up a hill carrying something that looked for all the world like another Sasquatch body. So it looks like that they do attend to their dead, and I think that they're very careful about leaving tracks and scat and things like that. I think I was quite lucky to run into the scat. It was actually buried under some pine straw. So, but in answer to the gentleman's question, I think they definitely could be dangerous and can be dangerous. I think they're like us. There's some mean ones and some nice ones, and some ones that are curious about humans and some ones that do not want to interact with us.
Okay. Well, we are at the halfway mark, and we're going to go ahead and go to intermission. Anybody that wants to call in and talk to Dr. Sentell, is that right, Sentell?
That's correct. That's exactly right.
Okay. from Bossier City, Louisiana, since I'm on a streak. If you would like to speak to him, the number is 347-989-0313, and we're going to about an 8-minute intermission. That'll give everyone time to go let their dogs out and get a drink and run to the restroom. We will be back in 8 minutes, and see y'all on the other side.
You are listening to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. back to our special guest, Webb Sentell.
Okay, we're back with the show. I don't know if Graz is with us or not. Graz, are you with us?
Hold on. Okay, Graz, now are you with us?
Unmute.
I was
Help
trying.
me. He was doing his kung fu thing there.
Oh, I know.
Oh, my electricity just decided to shut down, and I lost the website. I lost everything. I had to call in. What you gonna do?
I saw that it was asking me to end the episode, and I'm like, no. And I realized he was gone, and I'm like, what in the world? Well,
I don't even know what you guys were talking about while I was gone, so I don't know. What's going on?
We were talking about you, as usual.
Oh, good. Has anyone called him Karen yet?
Grab, I just quit laughing from the last time. Oh. You can call me Karen Graz if it makes you feel better.
I'll have to message Brenda someday, and I apologize for that, but that's all right.
Girl, she answered to it, though.
Yeah, you
no,
talking
she
to me?
didn't.
Oh.
She said, "Are you talking to me?" That's what she said.
Oh well.
Yeah. Well, our guest is not Karen. It's Dr. Samuel Webb Sentell.
That's right.
You'll know.
I don't even know where to take it from here.
Well,
we have a question from the chat.
Okay.
Does Dr. Sentell think infrasound is purely a tactic to confuse, or do they use it as communication between individuals? It's a good question.
That is a very good question. I think the answer is both. I think, we know from infrasound from particularly elephants that they can communicate through the thick jungle as far away as perhaps 20 miles. So we know that low-frequency sound cuts through that jungle a lot better than does high-frequency sound. So it could easily be a locating phenomenon, and I think it's used to disturb people. We know also from some of the military experiments and other experiments that certain low frequency sounds, I think it was 7 hertz, I can't really remember, but it's pretty disturbing. It makes you have a lot of dysphoric feelings, and you have funky feelings, and you want to kind of get out of there. So I think it's used for both to kind of rattle your gut a little bit, and it also probably at the very minimum lets other conspecifics know where you are or that you are there somewhere. So, but beyond that, I don't know at what level of communication it could be expected to operate. But I do probably both.
It probably carries a kind of an emotional content of some kind, different tonal qualities to it, different rumbling frequencies to it. The timbre, that kind of thing, could have emotional content between each other over a long distance, something like that.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that when it happened to me, the most dramatic time that I've ever had, and I've had a lot of times in the woods, I know you guys probably have too, where you just feel weird and you feel like you're being watched and things like that. The most dramatic time was when I was, like I say, sleeping in my hammock about 2 o'clock in the morning, way up in the morning, and I could literally see and feel my stomach vibrating. My viscera was vibrating, and I was quite upset and anxious. And like I say, I began to talk to whatever was out there, and I began to try to speak friendly and loving things. And I said, I want to be your friend. I'm here to be your friend. Please don't frighten me. And it stopped. That was the most amazing thing, is that my viscera quit vibrating like a bowl full of jelly at just about at the moment when I asked for to not be frightened. So that was very interesting to me.
Well, it's one of the concepts we've talked about for years here, is that they have an understanding of intent.
Yes.
And they're more connected to what's going on in, say, the ethers than we do.
They can sense things. They basically swim through nature. They can feel things. They can sense things more than we can. We've lost that. We've lost that over the millennia, thousands of years or whatever. Civilizations made us forget a lot of things. And they probably hunch us in certain fashion. Certain people say things like, I feel things in my gut. That's just something everybody says. You get something, you feel it in your gut. This probably has a lot more reality to it than we know.
Yes. And that's, the gentleman is asking, are they dangerous? I feel more comfortable in these woods now than, it's hard to describe my comfort level. I'm much more worried about wild hogs than I am Sasquatch. And it's because of this mutual intent. I have grown over the course of time. I've been in these particular woods for quite some time, several years. And I'm comfortable, and I have a trust that's built up, and I think that it's a mutual thing. I think one night I was walking along, and I don't want to get you guys, but I was walking along, and in my mind I heard, and it would seem like a female voice. It said, "Please stay on the trail," and I was glad to come to that. I wasn't going to go out in the trail is a nice, safe place to walk in the dark night, but I think that there's more to this than meets the eye, and sometimes you get gut feelings. I don't know if we can call that communication. I don't know if that was my imagination, but it was as clear as a bell. Something said to me, "Please stay on the trail," and I sort of had the feeling that maybe there was a young one around or whatever, or but again, it was a mutual respect kind of a thing, and so when I go to the woods, I go with a mutual respect. I don't go armed to the teeth, and that's what I kind of tease my old buddies at Gulf Coast. That's a totally different paradigm. I go out there looking for a relationship, and I've actually sat blindfolded. I have a blindfold that I put on, and I sit out in the middle of a clearing blindfolded. I just invite them to come up and touch me. Nobody has done it yet, but it's a unique thing to sit in the middle of the forest with a blindfold on and concentrate on having something, giving them permission to come up and touch you.
Well, having them speak English into a human mind is more of a conceptual thing.
That's right.
A lot of people say it could be just, you interpreting some kind of content that other people might feel in certain other ways, and your mind pretty much interprets it into whatever it is that you're doing. And it's a subjective experience. A lot of people go into the mind speak realm and stuff, and that's a subjective experience.
Exactly.
Nobody else can quantify, and a lot of people depend on it and try to explain it to people who haven't experienced it. So we really don't go into that realm too awful much.
And I can tell you the other thing is the relationship with the other animals. That's a fascinating thing. There are levels at which you can, let's say, for instance, use crows. Crows are the sentinels of the forest in the daytime, and you can. There's one level that you can know what's going on by listening to the crows, and there may be a deeper relationship that these beings have with the forest animals. I am now of the opinion that they have relationships with coyotes. I can't claim I didn't. I
completely agree with you. I completely agree with you about the crows and the coyotes both.
And so, I don't know the level of communication, but I think it's pretty deep. And the coyotes, a lot of times they seem to run with the coyotes, and you'll hear the coyotes, and then you'll hear not a coyote. And now I have a friend named Farland Huff, and one of his other friends said that he had fostered some fox kits, and that it was the funniest thing in the world to see Farland come out of the house with some lunch meat, and these foxes come out and eat this lunch meat out of his hand. I don't know. I haven't really talked to him about that story, but if you think about it, if you found an orphan coyote pup in the woods and you fed it, which a lot of us would do that. Rather than eat it, we probably would feed the orphan coyote pup, and the next thing you know, particularly if it's a female coyote, the pack forms around the female coyotes, and so then it starts having coyote pups, and you've got your own ready-made hunting pack. And so it'd be a great idea if you lived in the woods full time to have a pack of Canis latrans as your personal hunting pack.
Wow. Well, I have numerous recordings where there is a very deep howl, and it's solitary. And then shortly after that, the coyotes will kick in and they're chasing something. And my personal pet theory is that the Bigfoot have made a kill. They've taken the organs that they want from the kill. And then they call in the coyotes to clean up the mess and destroy any evidence there is of a Bigfoot kill. That's my theory.
Some of you may know of John Morley. John Morley is a former Air Force guy who's gotten into field biology and is very interested in Sasquatch, and he's got some interesting recordings. He's in East Texas a lot, and he has I think it's a night vision piece of film footage where he has a coyote coming onto the scene, and he makes a whooping sound like he has heard Sasquatch purportedly do. And he said the coyote does not run from him, it turns and runs toward him. So this is a very interesting thing. He said that when he made this sound of what he has thought to be Sasquatch, the coyote hot-footed it right straight in his direction to come to him. So he's the guy that really got me thinking about the symbiotic relationship with the coyotes. But I think it's definitely there. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't foster some piglets as well, and they may have some pigs that they raise. And these guys are the champions of the woods. They may have friends all throughout the woods, as far as we know.
Well, I've also noticed that whenever there is a Sasquatch in the area, and I sense and feel that they are in the area, if it's particularly if it's at during the daytime, there will also be crows, and crows are known to call and carry on and chase predators. I've seen them chase owls and other things, and I often think that when I hear crows chasing something out there, one of the first things I think it probably is chasing is a Sasquatch. If not a Sasquatch, some other predator. So it brings you aware. It makes you aware that there is something out there that is has got them all stirred up.
And we are just now realizing how smart crows are. Crows are probably at an intelligence level comparable to chimpanzees. They can remember, and crows are now documented to transmit information across generational lines. If somebody has been a threat to a crow, the parents can tell the offspring, and the offspring have been proven to be able to recognize the threat, having never laid eyes on it before. So crows are quite smart.
Wow.
There's some researchers up in the Northwest that are documenting crows' intelligence, and they can solve problems at a very, very complex level. So it's you just have to assume that there's a relationship with absolutely smartest thing in the forest, which is as we understand it, Sasquatch.
Now you have to put that next to certain times that a lot of people have said that when a Squatch is around, everything goes dead silent, including the bugs, birds.
Yeah.
Everything goes dead silent. And
yes.
That might have something to do more with intent, like you say, the crows go off during certain other types of situations, but the whole forest goes dead silent under other circumstances.
It could be intent, and it also could be another evidence of infrasound. It may be that low-frequency infrasound that's getting the attention of all the other forest critters. But yeah, I've definitely experienced that. And, there's sometimes an eerie silence that happens. And yeah, it's and there's that sense of presence sometimes that you get. Some people call it the sizzle. Sometimes walking down the trail, I'll get that sizzle that'll hit me. It's just that feeling of something is present, something is watching, something is in your area. I'm sure you guys
have a caller.
Okay.
May I go ahead and bring on Henry? And I'm sure Henry has some questions for Webb.
Okay.
So let's bring him on real quick. He's been holding for a long time. How about you, Henry? How are you doing?
Good evening. I'll get it out in a second. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hey, Miss Lauren. Want to wish you two an early Happy Mother's Day.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry.
Raz, Billy, what's going on?
Just waiting on you to postulate the rest of the situation to the world.
Yeah, Billy, I hope you're dodging those twisters down there.
Say again?
I say, I hope you're dodging those twisters down there.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Henry, do you have a question for Dr. Sentell?
Yes, I had a question about does he think that there's a possibility that somebody, possibly a female researcher, could try the Jane Goodall approach and perhaps live in the woods for maybe a year and try and get a habituation deal going. Now, of course, only thing is you have to have cameras, and I don't know what your feeling is about cameras as far as maybe interfering with.
That's been my.
It has to be documented. It would have to be documented, certainly.
Right. Well, my experience has been that when I have taken my thermal camera to the woods, activity ceases. Things, they kind of go away. So I have gone the other direction. Now, I'm all for people doing cameras if they want to. I'm trying it as low tech as I possibly can. So, and as I say, my experience has been that when I take my high-tech camera to the woods, my subjects seem to disappear and they don't come back for a couple of weeks. So I don't know, at this point I can't be sure, but it certainly seems to correlate. But as far as the female issue, I sometimes do invite some of my female co-researchers to come with me, and I've had a couple of very interesting things happen with them along. I won't say that I've had unequivocally more dramatic occurrences, but we know for a fact that Sasquatch seem to appear more often, and they hang around longer when it's just women and children. And I think even Dr. Fehrenbach and other people like that have collected some data that shows that they're statistically more likely to hang around if it's a female human being or a child. And sometimes they seem to even come up closer when they hear the sound of children playing. So I think that's a very good idea, and I think that and there are some women out there that are trying to do that. I forget the group's name, but they would go and sing around the campfire and with hopes that they would be more attracted and I think that's going to probably work. I do have the disadvantage of being a male. I go unarmed, and that's a controversial point. Paul Freeman said that he didn't start seeing them until he left his gun in the truck. And so I took that as a challenge, and that, you got to understand, part of it for me is, if you want to try to prove their existence, we have to do what science requires. But on the other hand, if we want to try to establish a relationship with them, we probably have to behave, very ethically and very sensitively, and try to get them to start interacting. And that's probably the superior method. I mean, I haven't been very successful at trying to trick them, doing hair traps and things like that. I've not had very much success. So at this point, I think of it as more of a shamanic kind of an approach. I'm out in the woods trying to deal with the dark forest and my fears of the night. I'm benefiting by overcoming my fears and sitting down in the woods with whatever this subject is, and trying to get to know it and trying to have a relationship with it. So, the ability to prove their existence, that has slipped down on my priority list to less than the top position. I'm trying now to engage them and make connections with them. And so, if in doing that, I'm able to gather some evidence, then I'll be happy to present that. But like I said, I've had everything happen except a clear visual. I've had glimpses of something big and hairy and brown, but nothing that I can say. I have the area where I go. The reason that I got started with this area is a gentleman by the name of Mr. Brumfield was out deer hunting one day, and he walked upon a cow carcass, and the cow carcass was wiggly, and he was looking at it, trying to figure out what was causing that, and this creature backed out of the rib cage of this cow carcass and stood up, and it was about 8 feet tall, covered with black hair, about 4 inches long, and he said it was the most magnificent specimen I ever saw in my life. And he said he had a little bit of offal or whatever hanging out of his mouth. And he looked at my 308, and I looked at him, and he turned and walked over a little bit of berm and disappeared into the woods. I said, Mr. Brumfield, was it possible that this was a man in a monkey suit? And he chuckled. He said, I was about 10 yards from him. He said, I could see his muscles rippling underneath his hair. Most magnificent specimen I ever saw. And Mr. Brumfield would not go to the woods with me. And this is where I'm doing my research right now in this very particular forest where he had this encounter. So he was 10 yards away. He could see the muscles rippling underneath the hair. And I have yet to have that kind of experience, but that's what I'm looking for, is to have I'm gonna leave the camera in the truck, and I'm gonna try to have a 10-yard away encounter with one of these guys. I keep thinking that one day the hammock is going to open up at 12 o'clock midnight, and this face is going to be staring at me, and I'm going to have a moment of incontinence. But,
I got you. But I mean, my thing is, I just may as well just with full disclosure, I believe that we should take at least one specimen. That's just how I see it.
I understand. A lot of people believe that. I think they're human beings. I think they're human hybrids, and the further down the trail we go, the more I think it's comparable to shooting a Hottentot, as I like to say, or a Kung Bushman, and a lot of people feel that we should take one, and there have been even instances where people have hit them with vehicles, and they managed to make it off into the woods, but it's a very difficult question. But as to the question about would a female researcher have a better chance? I think so. Yes, I think unequivocally a female researcher would have a much higher chance of a good interaction.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Well, anyway, that was pretty much all I had to say. Although, yes, week from this weekend is the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, so wanted to get out there. We have 5 speakers: John Kirk, Jim Sherman, Lauren Coleman, Bob Gimlin, and Dr. David Floyd. So it's going to be a great time, and I'm going to be leaving a week from today for Ohio. Matter of fact, this time next week I should be at the lodge, Salt Fork Lodge. So,
well, you have fun and tell everyone I said hello.
I will. Oh, by the way, for those who watch Finding Bigfoot, there's a special preview episode this Sunday. It's a new episode. New season starts May 31st. 2-hour special.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
you, Henry. We can always count on you to keep us updated on everything. So.
Yep. Okay, I'll talk to y'all later.
You have fun and travel safely, okay, Henry?
I will. Okay.
All right.
See y'all later.
All right. Bye, Henry. Webb, I have a question for you. Even though you have not had an official sighting, do you believe?
That's a very good question. I avoid saying that I believe. As a scientist, I that we have good, strong reason to hypothesize that they exist. Of course, I wouldn't be out in the woods sometimes 3 and 4 times a week in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night if I didn't strongly feel that this hypothesis was going to be supported. Now, I take exception with, that I was part of this Sasquatch Genome Project. I was very excited by it. I'm very proud of all the work and the contributions. It's a very courageous effort. I do not think that the question is over. I do not think that we are through answering that question. I think we're off to a good start. It's the first time we've ever gathered a database of that nature. But I don't think, I'm not to the point where I can say that I know for certain that they exist. There's a phenomenon called the third man factor. That's John Geiger wrote a book called The Third Man Factor, and Geiger, and this research was published in Nature a while back. That when we are alone in the wilderness, sometimes we have phenomena that happen. People who are climbing Everest and people who are lost at sea often have the presence of another entity there that they experience in a very palpable way. And it's been traced
sort of like Castaway and the soccer ball, like that, or?
Well, they call it the third man factor, and they come down from the slopes of the Himalayas and they survive the life-threatening situation, and they say, well, who was that extra person that was with us? And so we don't know. We think that is maybe a temporal lobe phenomenon. We don't really know yet, but we know there's a neurological phenomenon that happens when people are in wilderness situations. Now, very often in our Sasquatch research, we're not in a life-threatening situation, but sometimes we're very frightened at 3 o'clock in the morning, screamed at, but we just don't know. I mean, at this point, scientifically to say we know for certain they exist means we have to be able to rule out a lot of other hypotheses. And we're at a point now, let's be frank, most of us are Newtonians living in a post-Newtonian world. Sir Isaac Newton said that it's a hard knock world out there, and when you knock on it, it's solid. And Werner Heisenberg said that's not true at all. It's not a hard knock world. Everything is uncertain, and we don't know without an observer. It takes an observer to collapse the wave function into reality in the final analysis anyway. So we are intimately involved in the nature of reality. So at this point, maybe that's a little bit more than far afield than I should have gone, but at this point, I say that I believe, but obviously I do, or I wouldn't be out there. But
I knew you would kind of admit to it.
Put in terms of hypothesis generation, we have a lot of anecdotal evidence. Mr. Brumfield, the guy I told you about, very credible, deacon in the Baptist church for all of his life and was not a heavy drinker or a BSer, and he saw this creature 10 yards away, and it made such an impression upon him that he went to the house, hung up his rifle, and never went back even to get his deer stand. And one of his family members he's since deceased since I interviewed him. But that's the most compelling story I have, and I find him fully credible. So if we say in scientific terms, we have a lot of anecdotal evidence. We can't take the Patterson-Gimlin film and prove anything, but once I see one face to face, once one parts the hammock and says "boo," I'm going to tell you, yes, I know they exist. And, at this point, I would tell you that I think they do. I've smelled them. I've seen eye shine. Now, I'll tell you this, Matt Moneymaker, eye shine is a sighting. And he told me that at one point that he said he counts that as a visual sighting. I do have the scat that goes with it. I do have the hair that goes with it. But, I need to have a close encounter, the next level kind, in order to tell you for certain as a scientist that I know that they exist in the way that we are discussing.
Having a sighting where it's going to bump you right out of the objective world into the subjective world where it's going to be a real thing. And do you think that's going to have any effect on the way you handle things without losing your objectivity? You're going to have to still stand off. You're going to have to back off and look at it without becoming emotionally involved with it.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I find myself in that curious position. Grover Krantz never got a sighting. Renee DeHendren never got a sighting. And I'm just wondering if I'm going to ever have a sighting that I can consider unequivocal. And I certainly hope it happens. And like you say, it's going to change. I told my wife one time, I said, I see the problem. And she said, what? I said, I really don't want to see one. And she said, what do you mean? You're out. It's going to bust my worldview completely apart.
Right.
My mother told me that there were not boogeymen in the woods, and this is going to break down my whole worldview. And she just laughed. She doesn't want to see one either, but I will tell you that I do very much want to see one. And I thought, as I told you the story about holding the critter in the moonlight, I thought it was going to happen. One, very clearly something large was walking toward me. I could hear it with my amplified hearing, and it was popping limbs larger than my thumb as it stepped on them. And we were both, I thought, gosh, if he's as nervous as I am, he's pretty nervous because, but I stood there and I held the critter up in the moonlight, but nobody stuck their head out. So, but they certainly come get critters from the trees and from the places where I leave them, and they swap marbles with me, and they open jars, and they take watermelons. Another reason why it's not a coyote or a crow or whatever is that I've left a couple of volleyball-sized watermelons there. And on one occasion, they took the watermelon and left with it. On another occasion, it appeared as though somebody had taken the watermelon down to the edge of the bayou and opened it with a fingernail. It looks like it was sliced into with a fingernail, and the contents were eaten. So, they're very subtle beings. They leave you a lot of clues. They're very clever. I think they do things to see if you notice what they're doing. And a lot of times, I'm sitting there going, is this my imagination or is this really? So
exactly.
The further I go,
have you ever heard a language? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The more I study, the less I know, I had a professor one time named Brad Powers, the discoverer of the vomeronasal organ and why horses curl their lips. But Brad said, we learn more and more about less and less until finally we know nothing at all. That's a pretty interesting statement.
Have you ever heard a language?
Not per se. I have heard John Morley. My friend John Morley has some. He's very good at audio recording, and we have been talking about apparently hanging audio recorders is something they will tolerate fairly well. And he has
some. Yes, they do for some reason. That doesn't seem to bother them.
Yes, he has over in East Texas a recording of two large bipedal creatures walking up to a peanut butter baited, and they have a little conversation, and it sounds like one of them says sparkleberries, and the other one says it almost sounds like big trees, but it's a bit of a conversation, and it's just absolutely fascinating. And it's not samurai chatter; it's a little more understandable, but it's not exactly human language. But I've heard it on tape. I've not heard that in the woods. But I have heard the sound of children laughing in woods where there should be no children. I've heard some laughter and some chatter that sounded like kids or teenagers.
Well, you would imagine their language would be not understood by us any more than we would understand Cherokee back in the 1800s. So learning her language would take pretty much about the same base.
Yes. Now I have had this happen. I was in South Arkansas at an area that was a fairly active area, and I actually had a flat tire, and I was waiting on somebody to come help me with the flat tire, and it was about midnight, and I heard some coyotes coming in, and then I heard what sounded like a female voice saying "yite," like it said "yite," like "are you all right?" But it said it's kind of all together like "yite." And then about 30 minutes later, on the other side of the truck, I heard the same thing. It said "yite," and again, a female voice. And so, again, you say, is that my imagination? I've only gotten one good audio on record. It's almost maddening to have equipment failure and batteries go defunct.
That's the Bigfoot curse.
That's exactly it really seems to happen. But that one word question, "yite," and I heard it again twice, separated by 30 minutes. That would be the closest I would say to anything that I would attribute to possibly a watch that would be language based.
Have you thought about how you would handle somebody that's sitting over, say, about 20 yards from you and starts making like that yoic sound? How would you handle something like that as far as repeating back and forth the same word until another word is made, and then try to go from there? Have you thought about that kind of thing?
That's what when I got screamed at, I just sat down on the trail, and I've thought about this a lot. One of the things that as an ethologist seems to work is to, now if you avoid eye contact, these guys tend to disappear real quickly when you're not looking. But again, eye contact in the animal world is often thought to be an aggressive kind of a thing. So my notion is to lower myself and to be non-threatening, and that's what I did when I was screamed at. I sat down in a cross-legged position, and I began to tap on my I had a small stick and a larger stick, and I began to tap, and something would tap back with me, and I would do two, and it would do two, and I would do one, and it would do one, and very, very quiet little tapping. But sometimes, I don't know how it is with you guys, but when I would knock, sometimes I'll get a response, but very seldom can I get something to tap with me two times if I tap two or one or three. Very, very seldom have I had something, play a wood knock game with me to that level. It's more like one wood knock might get you one wood knock from one location and another wood knock, different tonality or different tree from another location. And that's usually the more common thing that I've experienced. But I would lower myself down and try to engage in a little, repartee with whatever subject I encountered.
Well, Webb, we have a lot of people out there that are just beginning to do their own research and trying to get set up to have their own research type plan. Do you have any suggestions for them?
Yes, I do. I think the thing to do is to go to an area where you think they are and make yourself known. Do the same thing. I wear the same snake boots, and they have the same squeak to them every time. I sing the Johnny Appleseed song. When I go into the woods where I frequent, they know I'm coming because I sing the Johnny Appleseed song. I don't try to sneak up on them. I don't try to be clever or stalking or whatever. And you just have to go and be there. So rather than go to all these different spots like I used to do and a lot of people do and carry a lot of weaponry and all that, I think it's better to go to a spot where you think there have been some activity, some sightings, maybe put out a little food, just, maybe again. And I've had people tell me that they've gotten some responses to music like drumming or the Indian flute. So do things that are interesting and get them to come to you. So I don't necessarily think you need to be armed. I think I think they will let you know if they don't want you in the woods. They will frighten you and kind of run you out of the woods. But once you come there and you have gifts, and they seem to like apples, they seem to like peanut butter, they seem to like I think Tom Powell said the one thing they like better than apples is apple pie, and I think that's probably true. They seem to like organic foods and natural foods better. Now, the one thing about this particular place is they're very picky. They're very picky about what they eat, and I think I told you the story about throwing the apple strudel down on the ground and not liking it. And these guys seem to, at times, prevent some of the other critters from coming up and eating at the food plot. I've had hot dogs go out on limbs for a long period of time. I've had apples rot on the limbs and nothing else touches it while they're eating the fritters on a almost daily basis. And so, but I think go to the woods. What I would advise people to do is find your own niche, find your own woods, go out there with a St. Francis kind of mentality, with love in your heart, and try to do the Jane Goodall approach. I think that is the ethical way to do it. And I think it's a misnomer to go out. Every time I've taken my thermal camera, I've made them go away. That's what's happened as a result of trying to catch them on thermal. Now,
right.
I don't know. I just think that I think they're very sensitive to cameras. I have a wooden little eyeball. It's kind of a funny little, it's an eyeball, and it's made out of wood. And I took it out there and I left it, and the activity reduced and I took the eyeball away, and the activity increased. Mm-hmm. I left. You can see this on my Facebook site. I left with some very, very realistic eyes, and I came back and the rabbit had been moved and one of the eyeballs had been torn out.
They don't like dolls. They don't like things that are looking at them, toys with eyes, and they don't like that kind of thing.
And so I think they will allow us to get audio much, much easier than they will video. So I think, in fact, M.K. Davis has some videos. I don't know where they came from, but the guy's clever enough to point the camera into a mirror. And he gets some Sasquatch activity on camera by pointing the camera into a mirror. And I think also, is it Scott Carpenter that shoots over his back or shoots backwards?
Yes.
So
yes.
If we go to great lengths to try to get them off of the eyeball issue, then you might get some video. But my area in science is tonic immobility, and one of my published papers that's made it the furthest in science is about tonic immobility. And we know that, playing possum is the common word. And what makes animals play possum is the eyeballs. If you take a rabbit and you say, what makes that rabbit freeze? And you put the hawk's wings up there, you put the hawk's talons up there, when you put the hawk's eyeballs up there, that's when the rabbit freezes. So animals are very sensitive to eyes and being visualized. So and Sasquatch appear to be very much the same. It's cameras and eyes and things like that they're very sensitive to.
How interesting is that? I would have never thought that.
Yeah, it's the eyeball. And a camera is nothing but a great big eye.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Game cams and plot watchers and things like that, same thing.
Yeah, and you know, there's probably, half a dozen good game, and the game cam pics we have are like an elbow or a shoulder or a back.
Coming up from behind.
And there's one good one, but I think it's a fake. There's one good one where the Sasquatch is looking straight into the camera, but if you look, it looks like he's got pants legs. And it looks like you don't catch him the full Monty, as they say, you know. I'm glad you like.
Well, someone said they saw a Squatch in overalls, and I don't know about that one. You know, whether they were Dickies or something else, I don't know. But
exactly. So, you know, and that's another reason why you should do your own research. People say, is this valid? Is this film? Have you seen this video? Whatever. And I'm interested in all that. But the bottom line is you got to go out and do your own research. I can't vouch for anybody else's research. I have a hard enough time vouching for my own. But yeah, the thing to do is go out there and do your own research. They're a very interesting subject. I don't think they're going to hurt us, even though they could. And I think that they will run you off. They'll run you out of the woods before they hurt you.
Mm-hmm. You've inspired me to kind of get back into it again. I mean, I'm in it, but it's kind of a observant type thing, and I haven't really tried to interact. It's more like I let them come and go, and I observe them coming and going. I'm not seeing them, actually, but, you know, not really trying to interact. And I'm kind of curious, getting some ideas on what I might try to do to see if I can get some interaction from them. Not interested in getting the picture or anything or evidence or anything like that, because I personally would prefer they were never proven to exist. In my opinion.
Yeah, because we out them, and then they become their life is in more danger. I'll just tell you this: the first time I went to these woods that I'm using now, it's a spooky, swampy woods, and I sat in my truck thinking, okay, so Robert W. Morgan says you got to go out in the woods where they are and leave your light off. And I just sat there and I looked at the woods. I couldn't even get out of the truck. I promise you, I couldn't.
Sounds like me.
And I just very slowly pushed myself until I found myself not only out of the truck, but 2.7 miles up in the swamp by myself, camping out. And so it took some getting used to. It really did. And I'll tell you this, when I stop, when I take a couple of weeks off, I get rusty and I get frightened and I can't go back.
You start losing your nerve.
That's exactly right. But now these woods, I took a lady out there, a lady friend who's, really seems to have the right vibes for them. And she was laughing. She said, every nook and cranny. I said, in about 3 steps, there's going to be a little rise, and there's going to be a second rise, and we're going to take a left on this next trip. And she laughed. She said, these woods like the back of your hand. I said, yeah, I've been coming out here for years doing these same trails. And if you do it that way, your comfort level will increase to where, it's the hogs that I'm worried about,
Mm-hmm. But I feel like if the Sasquatch around, the hogs aren't going to be.
That's exactly right. They're gonna keep the hogs off of.
Yeah, that's right. And I know and all the times that I've ever been, what is that when they follow you and they're with you and all that, and you're in the woods, you can't see them, but they're around. I've never seen a hog. All the time I've ever been out in the woods, I've never seen a hog. And I think if they're around, nothing else is going to be. You're perfectly safe.
We invite them when I go into the woods. I sing very often the Johnny Appleseed song is my signature, and then I say, "Come walk with me," and I talk to them, And at first you feel kind of weird talking to the forest, but I say, "Come walk with me," and a lot of times you can hear the sounds of something crunching its way along, and it'll stop when you stop. That's their.
Yes, that's a Sasquatch. I can't. Yeah. Yeah, That's what I always believe, because I'd even try walking backwards to try to catch something. Because they're listening to you, but they're watching you too. But I try walking backwards, try to catch them going across the clearing, We know
the legend is that young Sasquatch get initiated into their tribe when they are able to jump out in the trail in front of you and wave their hands, and you don't see them. And the legend is that this is what they have to do to get initiated into adult Sasquatch circles. Is you have to have jumped out in front of a human on the trail and waved your arms, and they didn't see you. And so I think that I've almost caught occasions. I've had some dark shapes move across the trail in front of me, and I thought, I think somebody just got in the club. But I never never can see enough to tell you that I absolutely, I know that they're there, and it's not my imagination. It's always on the edge of, is it live or is it Memorex? Is it my imagination or is something happening? And
I've said the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, we are down to 1 minute and 23 seconds.
Well, it's been, and I want to thank you for having me on.
It's been wonderful. I have really, truly enjoyed this interview very much. And I thank you so much for coming on, Webb. It was a great interview. I learned a lot. And I didn't think I could learn any more. I learned so much from this interview.
Well, I'm glad. I try to support all the researchers out there. I've heard all the stories, theories. I don't put anybody down. I'm supportive, and I try to be friendly and receptive to all points of view. So I think that's important.
It sure is. It definitely is, and wise words. Definitely wise words. Well, thanks, Webb, for coming on, and we're going to go ahead and end the show. And we'd love to have you back sometime. Would you be willing to come back?
I would, and I want to encourage folks that are in the D.C. area to check out the Society for Scientific Exploration. The conference is on May the 28th. It's the Hilton in Washington there. SSE, you can Google SSE and you can find out all the stuff that they're into, and Sasquatch is one of the things. And but they're into all sorts of other kind of phenomenology that's it's where you publish your fringe area science. So